Hi, my name is Debbie Levin, and welcome to 7 Steps to Creating Your Customised PR Plan. I've worked in PR for over 20 years, and I work with business owners and entrepreneurs to help them get more media visibility and also guest blogging opportunities to help them raise their profile. After this webinar, I'll be providing some notes, so you don't need to scribble down frantically as we're going through. But it is useful if you've got a pen and some paper handy, because then you can pop down some ideas as we're working through the different steps, the ideas that are specifically going to apply to your business. And afterwards as well, if you have any questions, then do email me, debbie@prcoach.co.uk, and I'll be happy to pick those up afterwards and help you on your way. So let's start with PR, what it is and what it can do for you. PR is all about what you say, what you do, what people say about you. Media and media coverage, being featured in the media visibility is an important part of that usually, and that helps you to build credibility, reputation, extend your reach, generate business opportunities in terms of leads and sales, and also collaborative working opportunities too. That third-party endorsement you get by being featured in the press and media can be incredibly powerful, because when people know you've been featured, then they immediately assume you've got that credibility and you're an expert in your particular field. Now, the logos I've put on the slide here really just to sort of give you a sense of press and media coverage is great, but you also need to think about it in terms of the right press and media. So being featured on the BBC or in the Guardian, in a big newspaper, is all well and good, but you always have to have in mind, and we'll come on to this in a minute, you always have to have in mind if you're being seen in the right place, if your audiences are actually there and seeing you in terms of the messages that you're getting across. So have that in mind. What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through the 7 steps. If you've signed up to this webinar, then you will have received in advance the 7 steps PR pyramid, which takes you through the different elements that we're going to cover today. If you've got that to hand, that's grand, because then you can sort of jot in some notes as we're going in terms of the ideas that come up. If you haven't, they're not a problem, but it's worth referring back to later because it gives you the building blocks that you need. But rather than go through this in a very theoretical way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go through a fictitious example so you can see how this can work for a completely made up example, but it helps you to see what you can do and how you can do it. So what we have got is meet Beth, completely made up. She's a fitness instructor and she specialises in before and after baby health and fitness. So she works a lot with pregnant women who've just had babies, or their babies are a little bit older and they're trying to get their bodies back into shape. She does local and regional work, so she does one-to-one groups. She also runs one-to-one sessions, bigger groups. She's also looking at an online program that will extend her reach, and she wants more media visibility both locally and also on that bigger stage to get eyeballs on that online program. And I thought that would be a really good sort of type of example to use so that you can see how we can go through the 7 steps. Also, in terms of Beth's own story, and this is something we will look at a little bit further on, which is very important in terms of your PR, is all about Beth's own story. And her own story is that she's a mum of 3, and she spent time with her children after they were born, got her body back into shape while looking after a young family, and so she really can sort of talk the talk, walk the walk in terms of she's been there and she's done it. So that's an important part of the whole big PR plan, because her story is hugely relevant in terms of what she offers and she can share that experience. So what we're now going to do is have a look very quickly at those 7 steps. You've seen the PR pyramid, hopefully, in the handout. I'm going to go through the kind of the theory part of it fairly quickly, because then we can get into the nuts and bolts of what this actually looks like when you are applying it to your business. So we start off with objectives. What do you want to achieve? Just saying media coverage isn't enough. You actually have to be very clear about the specifics of what you want to do, how you want to be perceived, and where you want to raise awareness and why. And those are the questions that you need to answer. The questions to prompt you in that PR pyramid document. So go back and have a look at that as you're working through after the webinar. So in terms of objectives, you have to be clear. And why is that important? It's important because you don't want your focus to be distracted. You don't want to end up doing press and media work which isn't relevant to you and what you want to achieve. And just to give you a very quick couple of examples, I was talking to someone some time ago, and they were incredibly excited that they'd been approached by a journalist and they did a media interview, which is all fabulous. This media interview actually went out on a very small program, which was on a cable channel. It went out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Very highly unlikely that their target audience was going to be watching it at all. And so you kind of just got to ask yourself the question when media opportunities come in, or if you're creating them for yourselves, does it fit with what you want to achieve? And likewise, someone else that I was speaking to some time ago who was approached by a journalist, got excited because they were approached by a journalist, jumped on the opportunity, but then didn't ask the right questions to pick away at whether this was the right fit for them, and they found themselves being involved in a program which was actually highly critical of their particular specialist area, and that didn't put them in a very good light. So it actually didn't work out very well for them. So that wasn't so great. So you have to ask yourself what it is you're setting out to achieve so that you've got clarity and focus. Then you need to think about your audiences, who you want to target, and that's important because once you've pinned down your audiences, it's not just about potential customers, it can be wider. You need to define them clearly. Once you've done that, then that gives you a very clear idea of how you can set about and finding the right contacts. And we're going to go into that in a minute. Messages, what do you want to say? That's important because you need consistency through the PR that you're doing. The objectives, audiences and messages are the strategic block. And then in terms of finding the right media outlets and journalists and the right ideas and activity that they want, that's the messy research stage. That's the creative research, going backwards and forwards to find the right kind of things that are going to work, and the right outlets. That doesn't get a little bit backwards and forwards, as we see. And then you can put together the pitch because you know you've done your research, and you wrap all that together in a schedule, a plan, a timeline, so you know exactly what you're doing. You assess the resources that you have available, the knowledge, the skills to actually implement it. So let's whiz through and let's talk about Beth. And let's create her plan. So here we go. We know that she is interested. This is what she said. We've asked her in our fictitious brain what she wants to achieve. She wants to position herself as an expert in this particular area. So pregnancy and post-pregnancy fitness, helping mums during pregnancy in terms of maintaining their health and fitness, and also after baby to get their bodies back into shape. She also wants to educate women. And she wants to educate them about the best way to lose that extra fat. And she also wants to inspire women to take action. So those are her objectives. We would define them very specifically, and that's a very just kind of high level sort of look at her objectives, but you do need to set them down in black and white. And in terms of her audiences, the obvious audiences for her are mums-to-be, those women returning to work who are thinking maybe about, sort of how they're going to look when they return to work, maybe that they want to have a look at their sort of health and fitness with that kind of thing in mind. There may be other audiences for her as well, seeing as she does a lot of work locally. She may have the local community specifically as an audience. If she's doing lots of networking and she's also thinking about the opportunities there, and that's a good way for her to get business if business is being referred via other people in that kind of way. Maybe regional business would be good. That would be good for her profile anyway, but maybe there are specific reasons why she might want that. So you dig down with the audiences to find who it is that you want to target. And so what are we going to do next in terms of her plan? Well, typically what we're going to do is we're going to start with, what is she doing now? What is Beth doing now? So has she got any events, exhibitions, speaker opportunities, anything she's doing with charities or local groups, collaborations? What's she doing in terms of products and services? And what you do is basically set down what is it you are focusing on now, and then you can look at the opportunities for wrapping PR around that. And just to give you an example, if you take the exhibition side of things, I know I was working with someone sort of a number of years ago, and they were attending an exhibition anyway, as part of their business and as part of trying to connect with new people and generate leads and generate sales. If you are doing something like that, then there is an opportunity for you to create some PR. Great opportunity. So if you are attending something like that, always think about the PR opportunity. And just to explain how that worked for this particular client, they were attending an exhibition, all fabulous, lots of people attend an exhibition. Make sure you leverage the PR side of things. What we did is we actually created a guide. Her stand was all about setting up a business, so we actually created a business guide and we did a press release on it and launched it actually at the show. So it meant that we had the opportunity to contact the relevant journalists before the exhibition, actually at the exhibition, and then after the exhibition, and that generated press and media coverage for her. Journalists at exhibitions want stories, so if you're there, go and give them a story. So we look at what she's doing at the moment. Maybe she's doing some sort of charity event in the park, a Mums and Bumps fitness thing to raise money for a local sort of sort of pregnancy or sort of baby charity or something like that. That's an opportunity for PR. So take what you're doing now and list that down. We also know what Beth's story is, that she's got 3 kids, that she set up the business while she was bringing up those kids, that she fitted in health and fitness around looking after a young family, and that's a great sort of part of what her PR is all about in terms of having the experience. So those are the things that we're going to look at first of all, so that we can kind of get a feel for what is already out there that has mileage in terms of PR. And then now we're going to get into the messy bit. We're going to get our hands really messy, because what we've got to do is we've got to look at finding the right media and then putting that together with the right ideas. Now this is one bit where I think people tend to get sort of stuck and hung up. Media databases are out there and they can be incredibly expensive. You can get a free trial for something like PR Max, which is actually a reasonably affordable one. You can have a look, but actually it's not just about getting the contacts, it's about giving the contacts the right stuff, approaching them in the right way. So it's not just about having a list of contacts, but you could have a look at something like that. But there are also other ways to find the press and media that are relevant for you and for your business. So Media UK, the Paperboy, are ways of finding newspapers and other press and media that you can look at. And it's also worth looking at the news agents. If you can pick up a hard copy of the publications that are relevant for you, get them, look at them, study them. But you can also find an awful lot of stuff online, and we're going to have a look in a moment about some of the ways that you can do that. So if you can't access a database, it's not a problem. And what you don't want to do as well is to actually get together a great big huge list of media contacts. That's not the way to do it. Be laser focused, and that means you can give them exactly what they want, because you'll have a better understanding of them. So you start small. But just to give you an idea, it's not all about contacts. It's about approaching the right journalists in the right way with the right ideas, the right stuff. And to give you a bit of an example, I think it was about a couple of years ago, I was working with a client and I was listening to the radio in the car. It was a Sunday afternoon and it was a chat show. It was a phone-in chat show. I thought that's exactly the type of thing that client would be good for. Found the name of the contact, did a pitch, client got on the show, and they were on the show for I think it was about an hour, and it was a phone-in segment, and they were providing people with advice and information about managing debt. Great opportunity. BBC London, it was exactly their kind of target market. And also another example of a client where I spotted something, I think it was in the Evening Standard, and it was a journalist that had done a piece on an exhibition. I was looking at the PR for a client that was also doing an exhibition, found a journalist that was covering a similar kind of area, approached them to see if they were interested, and that generated a half-page Evening Standard splash for the client. So these are people that I hadn't discussed anything with before, hadn't met, hadn't wined and dined, but I gave them something that fitted what they wanted, and that's what you need to bear in mind. So now let's get our hands even more dirty and let's go and find some relevant media contacts and journalists for Beth. So you'll see on the slide here, Twitter. Twitter is a great opportunity to connect with journalists who are looking for what you have to offer. some 92% of journalists reported in a Sicilian sort of research, which is actually done annually. They reported in their research that 92% of journalists use Twitter regularly to source information, case studies, experts. There are hashtags that journalists use to put out media requests. So it's worth hopping onto Twitter, having a look, putting in the hashtag journo request, and then adding that to your key terms. You may need to play around with the key terms, and just do it as and when you're in and out of Twitter. Don't get obsessed by it. But this can be a really good way of finding opportunities that are coming up now, but also just scrolling back and seeing if there are particular journalists that are popping up time and time again that are covering your particular area. So that's a really useful tool for finding journalists that are going to be interested in what you have to say. So this is part of our research. We're going to find some journalists on Twitter. And what I did here is I typed in, I think it would have been pregnant or pregnancy plus journo request, and you can see here a couple of things that have popped up. The first one is, have you received contradictory, conflicting health advice while pregnant? It's an interesting one. Another one further down, wanting to speak to ladies who ski and have done so while pregnant. And then on the one at the bottom is just talking about, sort of using media requests, and it mentions one of the other hashtags PR request as well as journo request. So that was just worth including. So that's great. Now, are they relevant for Beth? It may be that she wouldn't necessarily contact the journalist and say, hello, I'm a health and fitness person, do you want to speak to me? Because that's not what they're after. But it may be relevant in terms of Beth's clients and the case studies she has. Because one of the things that Beth needs to think about is how she can help these journalists get what they need without being pushy and salesy. And she can do that by saying to them, I can put you in touch with someone who can help you with this. So that's one thing to bear in mind. How else can you use online to find the people that you want to connect with, the journalists and media outlets? Freelance journalists are like gold because they work across several different media outlets. You might have a journalist, I know one in particular, who works on This Morning, which is a daytime television breakfast show here in the UK, also works on Grazia magazine and works for a national newspaper, the Daily Mail, and works for magazines as well. And if you find someone who's got your specialist area sort of under the umbrella of things that they look at and they work across media, then that's a really good opportunity for you to get in there and to build contacts, to get to know them, to be helpful to them so they come back to you time and time again for comment and information and insight. I did a search here for freelance journalist plus pregnancy. You'll need to play around with the keywords that are relevant for your niche. It's worth jotting those down to have a think about that as you come back. But this is a search, freelance plus journalist, and you can see a couple of people have popped up that are worth looking at. That doesn't mean that you ping off an email straight away and introduce yourself. You still need to do a bit more research to find out exactly what they've written, what kind of stuff they do. Have a look on what they're doing on social media so you can follow them and just get onto their radar if it's relevant. So the first one at the top of the page is someone who's been an interviewee for Prima Baby and Pregnancy. So it's worth having a look at, are they doing bylined articles? Are they actually do they actually have a story to tell as well? It's just an interesting one to have a look at, but it's certainly worth researching that to see what they've done. The second one down, they've written stuff on pregnancy and babies and families and parenting. That's all good stuff. That's exactly the kind of area that we want to be in. So we're going to have a look and see what she's written and see if there are opportunities there for connecting. I'm moving further down as well to Rob Kemp. He's interesting because he's done stuff for pregnancy, baby new, pregnancy and birth. He's also done stuff for Cycling Plus and trail running. So he's obviously got an interest in fitness, and that then might be a really good opportunity to check out to see what he's run and see if there's a way of combining the health and the fitness that he's interested in with all the pregnancy and the post-pregnancy stuff as well. And he is certainly one worth investigating a bit further. So you can see how freelance journalists can really provide you with a good kind of in, and because they have their fingers in lots of pies, they can be really useful contacts that you establish and build up over time. So how else can you use online to find the types of media outlets that you want to be seen in and you want to target? I did a search engine searched, and I typed in exercise and best in pregnancy, and these are some of the results that came up. So these are some of the typically the online, the websites that I would look at that would have opportunities for Beth. So the Bump looks a really interesting one. Moving down, Healthline, and then Women's Health Mag. These are all ones that came up. I think it would have been on the first or the second page of the search results that came up. You need to play around with the different key terms. Also, it's worth typing in your niche term plus news, and that will bring up the sites that actually have news sections that are relevant. So that's a good one to do. I also look at mock titles. So if I was thinking about Beth in particular, I might type in something like 7 ways to lose the baby fat, or 21 foods sabotaging your post-pregnancy body. You know, so the kind of titles that might typically be out there, to see where they've appeared, and then you've got a good idea for where your target market is and the relevant content that's going to be good to look at. Because if they've taken those kind of articles, they'll take other similar kind of articles too. The other thing to do, and this is where you can save yourself a lot of time and hassle and ride on the back of what your competitors have done, is to type in the name of your competitors and see where they have coverage. And that's helpful for a number of reasons. It's helpful because it gives you a good sense of where they're getting profile, so that's fab. It also points you in the direction of places potentially to look at yourself. And thirdly, if you go in and look at the competitors and what they actually have there, if they have bylined articles are articles that are written in their name. If they have bylined articles, then what you can do is actually look at those articles and provide an angle on them and pitch that into the editor for something that you could provide. And to give you an example of that, on a small business website, I saw an article by one of my competitors, and it was about how to write a press release. Great, very useful tips, which were all fabulous. So what I did is I dropped a line to the editor and said, saw this article on how to write a press release, all great tips. Would you also be interested in how businesses can get media coverage without writing a press release? Now, we clearly know he was interested in how he can get coverage with a press release, and it makes perfect sense that, you know, this other idea would be relevant and interesting as well. And he said yes, took the article. Fabulous. So bear that in mind, search out for your competitors and look at the other slants and angles that you can get in terms of coverage off the back of their hard work. So now, what do you do once you've done all of that kind of research? You'll have pulled together some names of publications and websites and programs. You now need to do the in-depth research to pick out what's going to work for you. And so what this is called, as you can see, the matrix. Don't be scared. It's not scary at all. But it's a very quick and easy way for you to pop in the relevant information on the media outlets and the journalists that you've picked up as well. Pick a handful, pick a small number, half a dozen, just focus on that. Now you need to go into those websites, excuse me, in those publications, and do some analysis. And what that means is picking through, do they have a news section? Do they have regular feature type of slots and articles? Are there regular things that come up time and time again? My profile, my story, look at those. Can you tell whether they take contributed articles? And by that I mean the bylined articles where it's written in someone else's name. Are there case studies? So those are kind of like sort of the stories of people and their experiences. You will add on to these columns as you're doing all of your work and all of your research, and what you will find is what that will give you is it'll give you a very quick and easy glance, at a glance picture of what those kind of publications and outlets are interested in, what they regularly feature, so you can see where your ideas are going to fit. Okay, so that's important because it's going to save you time and it's going to save you hassle. And that's exactly what you want to do. So at this stage, you're just doing all the research, hoovering up the information, putting it into this matrix so you can see at a glance. Because when it comes to things like press releases, you're going to be able to see straight away if there's a publication it doesn't take news stories, there's no point sending it to them. Okay, so it's going to make you targeted and focused to get as much out of your PR as possible. What happens with this research as well is the more research you do, the more excuse me, you will spot opportunities that will be good for you and your business. So the research feeds the ideas you'll have for PR, and the ideas will feed the research. And that's why it's a bit messy, because you go backwards and forwards. Now, let's move on to what journalists are interested in, and then we can start to fit all of this together. You've done the groundwork on the research by this stage, and this is what we're doing for Beth. We're looking at these particular outlets, and we're going to go through and pick it all apart and put in that information. But what you also need to have is you need to have a good understanding of what it is that journalists want from you. So think about it. If you're contacting a journalist, you might be contacting them for any number of reasons. It might be that it's about a news story. It might be that it's about an article that you want to contribute. Okay, there could be a number of reasons. Now, first of all, let's focus on the news side of things, because you will have news, whether you think you've got it or not. There will be news in what you are doing, or you can create news, and we are going to talk about that in a minute. But let's get a good understanding of what journalists want from a news perspective. They want people stories, they want human interest, they want to know about the impact on people, the benefit to people of your news. They also want scandal and conflict and bad stuff, and your job is to steer them away from that by giving them lots of good stuff. Things like research and the first to do something, the biggest, the fastest. You provide news stories that are based on the back of trends, money stories, something that's unusual, something that's quite controversial, something that's shocking. You may not want to do shocking and controversial if it doesn't fit with your business, that's fine. But you need to give them all those other things that they're going to be interested in. People is absolutely key. There has to be people, a human interest aspect. There are lots of other ingredients as well, and I'll put those all in the notes for you, so you get an idea. But the important thing from a journalist's perspective is they want something that's relevant, that's local, that's timely. And so what you need to do is, when you have a news story, you need to splice it and dice it. And what I mean by that is your particular news story might be relevant for a range of press and media. And if we take Beth as our example, if she's won an award, then there's an opportunity to shout about that to the local press and media, maybe to regional business press and media, to pregnancy press and media, maybe to women's consumer as well, more generally, maybe to her specialist press and media, to peers in her particular industry. Depending on what the award is, then it may be that she would want to send that news out to several different types of media. And what you do is you splice and dice. You take the same story, but you make the front end, the title and the first paragraph tailored for that particular media outlet. So if, for example, you're going to the local press and she lives in Huddersfield, then in your title you would want Huddersfield woman takes national award, National Fitness Award, or National Fitness Blog Award, or whatever it is, but you make it local specific to that particular type of press and media. And again, you would amend it if you were going to, say, the fitness specialist press, if you were going to the pregnancy press, and that makes it more relevant to them, more interesting. Journalists will look at the title in your email, and if you get the title right in your email, the subject line, then that's what will encourage them to open the email. That's the only thing you want them to do when they see the subject line, is to open the email. So make it as relevant for them. They need to know at a glance that it exactly fits with their audience. So that's what you need to do. And just to give you an example, something, and it's a case study I'm going to be including in the notes as well, where I was working with a client who actually got an award, which was fabulous, fabulous stuff. and did exactly that splice and dice approach to tailor it to the different types of press and media. And one of those tailored releases went out just to 3 journalists, because it's very specific press and media. It was actually to the Jewish press, and it went out to 3 journalists. One of them came back to us, wanted a media interview. I think she got a really decent splash in the publication. That generated several leads and resulted in £15,000 worth of business from that one press release, which went to those 3 journalists, which generated that interview. So you don't have to send out to hundreds and hundreds of journalists. In fact, actually that kind of works against you because you can't be specific enough. If you can be tailored, it can work. Does that happen with every news release? No, it doesn't. Is she fabulous at sales? Yes, she is. But the point is, you give yourself the best chance of getting eyeballs on your business by getting coverage, and then people kind of connecting with you, following you, contacting you, if you get that kind of approach right. And like I said, I'll be sharing that case study after the webinar, so you get more of an idea of how that's going to work. So let's come back to Beth and let's crack on with what we're going to do for Beth. Now, we started off with looking at, for Beth, the kind of stuff she's doing at the moment. Is she doing exhibitions and events and charity things? There are things she will have planned, and we can look at the news side of it. What can we shout about? Do we need to announce them? Can we report on successes? So we look at all the things she's got planned. This is specifically around the news part, the PR for Beth. And then we're going to look at creating some news as well. So if you've got an event planned, think about the PR aspect. Who do you want to target? Go and analyse that press and media to find the right way to get in there. Okay. But if you haven't got any news, you probably have, you just need to find it. But if you really don't think you've got any news, or to add to what you've already got, you can create news. So we've already got a sense of what journalists want. They want things that are unusual. They want things that are to do with money. They want things that are kind of sort of quite striking and different, and trends and research, all those kind of things. And so you can create news. That doesn't mean that the news is false in any way. You're just actually finding a reason for a story. And so to give you an example for Beth, one of the things that she might do is actually create a health and fitness rescue mission, where she might actually put something out which offers people this mission, which is actually all around her going and staying with someone for 3 days in their home to provide them with a tailored program, not just tailored, exercises or tailored sort of in terms of diet, but it's actually completely tailored around their lifestyle. So she goes and stays with them to do this tailored program, health and fitness program for them. That is something very different. That is something unusual. And that is something that we could do some PR around in terms of putting something out there and getting some eyeballs on her business, or even linking up with another organisation to do it as some sort of for competition. So that's something else that might be worth thinking about. Research is always a great one for generating press and media coverage. We might do some research with Beth, which is all around women's perceptions. Go and survey some women and find, for example, that 87% of women feel ashamed of their bodies a year after giving birth. Of course, I've completely made that up off the top of my head, but you get the idea that you can come up with something which is interesting and which is a talking point. It then gives Beth the opportunity to talk about how women can get back in control of their bodies, and the importance of the whole psychological mindset around health and fitness. And so it gives a lot of scope for being able to put some of those points forward, as well as the practical things about being able to get back on track with health and fitness, fit it around the kids, all those key messages that we spoke about before. A world record, let's do something really big. There is actually, bizarrely, a world record for the fastest half marathon buggy push. That could be one that could generate a lot of interest if we had a go, and if we smashed it too, that would be even better. But there were all sorts of other kind of records that might well be worth looking at. It's a fun one to do. It's a fun one to look at. If it's a bit stretched, if it's a stretch too far, of course, don't worry about it. But it's actually really just to get you in the mindset, the kind of things that are interesting. Journalists want what I call East and Erst, the first of something, the biggest, the longest. All those kind of things are the things that are interesting for journalists, as long as you keep the people aspect and the human interest side in mind. Milestones and anniversaries are good ones too. Your 1,000th customer or client, 5 years in business. Those are all ones that work particularly well with local press and media. If you have a new business win or you're expanding your business, again, local and also regional, that works particularly well. Awards are a great way of getting PR, announcing your awards that we mentioned before, and you really just need to sort of get yourself in the head of a journalist. Go and read the press and media that's relevant to you, as well as looking at the headlines in newspapers, and you'll soon start to see what it is that journalists are interested in and how that can fit with your business. One of the best pieces of advice I was ever given was to go and read the national newspapers and the news and brief sections, and they are 25, 50 words, really short and concise to get the story across, and you soon get a feel for what it is that journalists want, and that's what you need to do to get into their heads. So this is the news part we're going to look at for Beth. We're going to have a think around some of those things, and that's just the kind of initial thoughts and ideas. We could come up with a whole load of other stuff as well. If she wants to, focus much more on the health side and the diet side, maybe we can come up with a specific type of dish, which is kind of like, food on the go around the kids. There are all sorts of things that we could do and come up with, and you can look at how that would fit for you in your business. And in terms of the non-news side, you've got a news perspective, you've also got other non-news opportunities as well. So it's not just about having press releases and news announcements. We can always also dig down for Beth and look at her own personal story. And because of the research that we've done, what we can do is we can see at a glance of our matrix whether there are opportunities for those kind of personal stories and where Beth's story would fit with that. Likewise, she will have case studies of her clients and the experience that they've gone through, and what we would do is see whether there are opportunities for those particular stories to be told as well. An interesting one to look at, and one that's really well worth thinking about, is putting some sort of monitoring in place for your keywords and new content that comes online relevant for your particular niche. So you can see the news stories, and you can do this all through Google Alerts. It picks up new content relevant for the keywords that you define, picks up new stories and new content, and then we would actually look at getting Beth to comment on the back of some of those stories so that she can wave her hand in the air to the relevant journalists and media outlets. And by doing that consistently, she's getting in there and she's becoming familiar to them. An important part of Beth's plan would also be expert articles and guest blogging, because what she wants to do is she wants to put herself out there as an expert, and what's important is that she can demonstrate her expertise by providing advice and information and resources, and she can do that in a way with expert articles written in her name that give the outline of seven ways to get your body back in track after baby, 7 exercise routines that will fit around baby, sort of family life. Those are the kind of things that we could look at. We would look for the relevant opportunities for that. Calendar days are also one to have a look at. Regular days throughout the year, particular annual events as well as calendar days. So for annual events, it may be that people are thinking about sort of health and fitness at particular times of the year. That's one to think about. But calendar days as well, there are things like World Health Fitness Day and sort of Healthy Eating Day. And if you know about those in advance, then you can plan an opportunity around approaching the relevant press and media, making them aware of those calendar days and what you have got, what Beth has got that is relevant if they're interested in that, and that you can help them with. And also, what else could we do with Beth? Maybe we can create some events. Maybe we can create an event, if she's not already doing an event in the park with Mums and Bumps to raise some money, we could do one. We could look at some sort of health and fitness clinic. We could look at actually organising an event that we would then generate some PR around. So those are quite useful ones to think about. You have got in the pre-webinar bonuses a whole list of ideas which would help you create PR. So it's about finding the right idea for your business that's going to fit for you. So let's move on. What do you do now? You bring all of that information together and you put it into a plan and a calendar, and you work out what you're going to do and when you're going to do it. Because by now what you've done is you've pulled together research, found the right press and media outlets, or a select number of them to focus on, had to think about the ideas and things that you can give them, and now it's a matter of putting them together and seeing what's going to fit where. So you don't just come up with an idea and chuck it out to people. You've got to do the both parts to get the right fit. Now, this is a PR calendar. You'll be getting a template in the post-webinar bonuses. I've listed down on the left-hand side all sorts of things you might do in terms of communication. So not just press and media, but communication generally, because each of those elements has an opportunity for you in terms of PR. So if you're doing a blog on your website, if you send out an e-newsletter, that's all fabulous because you can announce your news via those particular mechanisms, but you can also use them to shout about your PR wins. So it's about thinking of the big picture. If you've got events and meetings coming up, think about them in terms of PR. So I've listed a whole load of things down on the left-hand side, which will help you to think about what you've got going on and where the PR opportunities are. Under press releases, you might list, for example, the different news announcements you have. And then under feature article placement and guest blogs, the opportunities you have there and where you're going to do it. So that gives you an idea of how you're going to do it. For your post-webinar bonuses, I'm including a template and also a tracker for when you're actually pitching your journalists. You get the right pitch when you've done that research and you know that you're targeting the right place with the right idea. So, did you find this useful? Are you able now to work through the steps to get down some ideas and to pin down some media outlets that you can go and target for your business? Like I said, I'll be providing notes for this webinar, and you're obviously getting this recording as well. I hope I've given you some ideas and some tools and techniques you can go and run with. If you have any questions, then email me, debbie@prcoach.co.uk. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. I really do. Let me know what you thought. If you want me to run a similar kind of webinar again, if you have any other ideas for webinars as well. Much appreciated. Have a good day. Bye-bye.